On the air with our first guest of the evening, someone that it is a true honor to speak with, the king of the bees, if you will, Mr. Roger Corman. Welcome to the show, Roger.
Very happy to be with you, Tiffany.
I cannot stress enough how much of an honor it is to have you on the show, and I mean, your credits just range for miles. You've been the producer on over 380 films. So let's start at what you're doing now. Can you tell us about some of the current projects that you are working on?
Yes, I really have a current project. At 9 o'clock tonight on the Sci-Fi Channel, my new picture, Dino-Shark, will be debuting. And I'm riding a fairly good high at the moment because I got a great review in the New York Post. They gave me 4 stars, and the review ended with the critic saying, "I loved it." So I figure I can't do any better than that.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what Dino-Shark is about?
All right. Dino-Shark is a follow-up to a picture I made a few years ago called Dino-Croc, which I made and sold to the Sci-Fi Channel, and it got the highest rating of the year. So I've made a couple of other pictures for the Sci-Fi Channel, and they came up with the title Dino-Shark on the basis that Dino-Croc did so well, why not Dino-Shark? So I came up with, I had to come up with a way to start it. My theory on all of this type of picture is that you give the audience some semi-logical reason for believing in the film. They want to see the film, so therefore if it's not too far-fetched, you give them the explanation. Then, however, you are completely logical throughout the film as to what takes place. So you just ask the audience for this, what should I say, this one willing suspension of disbelief. In this particular case, we use global warming and the fact that the glaciers are melting, and we got some really phenomenal stock footage of glaciers breaking apart and sliding into the Arctic Sea. Now, what we have frozen in the glacier for 150 years is the embryo of a dino shark, a prehistoric shark. And that shark comes out of the frozen glaciers and, as any reasonable shark would do, immediately heads for southern, warmer waters. And you can sort of figure what takes place.
Right. Now, let me ask you, I mean, you've had quite a few films that have been considered man versus nature films. Do you ever get tired of making them, or are you concerned about possibly trying to deviate from a rehash of old films such as Piranha and things like that?
Yes, there is the feeling that on some of these we're repeating ourselves. So I'm varying it. I'm only doing one more of this type of film, and this is again is a title Sci-Fi came up with, which is Sharktopus, which half shark, half octopus. This is a little difficult to conceive of because with Dino-Croc and Dino-Shark, there undoubtedly were prehistoric crocodiles and prehistoric sharks, but there was no such thing as a prehistoric or existing half shark, half octopus. So that at least will give me something new, but that will probably wrap up this kind of film, and I'll be moving on to others because I've done, as you know, just about every kind of film there is, and I'd like to vary it a little bit.
Right. Now, you had mentioned that you have the use of some extraordinary stock footage, and that gives me a perfect opportunity to kind of ask you how you got into the idea of using stock footage, because you are touted, sir, as being one of the producers that can make 1 billion movies and never lose a dime.
Well, in the first place, I made a fair number of movies, and I've lost a couple of times. That was the publisher's idea. Matter of fact, I called the publisher and said, this title isn't really true. I've lost a couple of times. And his answer was, did every title of every picture you made say exactly what was in the picture? And I said, call the book anything you want.
Fabulous. Now, in addition to using stock footage, you were known for, and I wanted to ask you about this as well, you were known for often being able to cut corners by using the same sets for multiple productions.
That's true. I deviated a little bit from your question about stock footage when you talked about never losing a dime. I wanted to explain that I did lose a couple of times. Yes, I use stock footage for a simple reason. My pictures are medium budget and low budget pictures, although the cost has gone up recently. Dino Shark cost about $2 million, which is considered in Hollywood a small amount of money. But since I back my pictures with my own money, I'm saying, wait a minute, that's $2 million. That's not such a small amount.
Right.
But in order to make the picture look bigger, every major studio has a stock department where you can buy for a certain amount of money stock footage. Now, the only stock footage which I used to make the picture bigger, for instance, when I did Cyclops for the Sci-Fi Channel 2 years ago, I bought stock footage of ancient Rome from the Spartacus TV show, so I had all of my long shots already bought and paid for, what we call our establishing shots. Then I was able to shoot the picture with medium shots and close shots, so I didn't have to build so many big sets. I already had the big sets. So that's the way I use stock footage. And for you reusing sets, it's the same concept. Probably the best example of that was a picture I made in the early 1960s, Mask of the Red Death, in London. We were shooting at, I forget, I think it was ABC Studios in London, and they had shot a huge period picture, and I don't remember, it was either Beckett or A Man of All Seasons. And what the studios do, they have what they call a scene dock. When they're finished, particularly when they're finished with very intricate and big films, you don't throw away the set. On the other hand, you can't leave it standing because you want to shoot another film. So they take the flats, the pieces of the sets, and they break them apart and store them in the scene dock. And Danny Haller, my art director, and I saw those, and these were the greatest looking flats we've ever seen. And Danny redesigned a whole giant set for Prince Prospero's castle, and he reused the sets of the flats from these other sets to make a completely different set that actually I thought looked better than the original picture.
Mm-hmm. Now, I wanted to ask you, because in kind of the beginning of your career, you started out working with another B-movie maverick by the name of Samuel Z. Arkoff, who we actually interviewed before his passing.
Oh, yes.
What was your opinion of Sam? What was it like working with him? Because we've heard varying opinions from different people that we've interviewed.
Well, Sam was a very tough negotiator, and I can well understand the people he negotiated with maybe not particularly liked him, but I always got along well with Sam because I felt he was a highly intelligent and well-trained lawyer, and AIP, American International Pictures, he was vice president and Jim Nicholson was president, was the most successful independent studio starting in the late 50s and going into the 70s after Sam had died, after Sam had retired and Jim had died. And one of the reasons for their success was there were no arguments between them. Jim was in charge of production, Sam was in charge of business affairs, and they each stuck to their area, and they worked very well. So I have nothing but good things to say about Sam.
Well, that's fabulous. And I understand that you were actually instrumental in leading AIP into doing their first color productions. Is that correct?
They had done a couple of color westerns before on 10-day schedules, but I they had a way of sending two pictures out together that I would make on a 10-day schedule in black and white for about $70,000 or $80,000, and say two pictures for the price of one, two horror pictures, two science fiction pictures, two gangster pictures, whatever it was. And they wanted me to make two horror films. And I felt that they were using this sales gimmick too much, and also, frankly, I simply wanted to move up a little bit. So I convinced them to, instead of two 10-day pictures, black and white, let me have 15 days, and I would shoot in color and make one film that would stand on its own. And they asked me what I wanted to make, and it was The Fall of the House of Usher. And Jim, of course, was the guy who made the key decisions, but Sam would sit in on these meetings. And they both said immediately, yes, we will do that, because I think they themselves realized that the sales gimmick was starting to wear out, and they wanted AIP to move up. So you hear about these people who say, well, I fought with the studio to get my picture made. There was no fighting at all. I said, this is what I'd like to do, and they said, fine, we'll do it.
Now, I also wanted to ask you, because, of course, in your Poe series that you did with AIP, you got to work with some legends in the field, such as Vincent Price. You've also worked with Boris Karloff. And we had actually interviewed Dick Miller a couple years ago, and he had mentioned that New Horizon and yourself had always preferred to work with Vincent because he would wait to be paid, as to where Karloff wanted to be paid right away. Can you comment on that, and what was it just like working with both gentlemen?
It's completely untrue. We always pay everybody right away. I don't know. The only thing I think you can think of is that I had on one picture profit participation because I had a little bit less money, and Vincent actually just simply was not available. And Boris was willing to take a little less money and take a profit participation, of which he did quite well because the picture was successful. So I think Dick may have been referring to that and not being aware that the reason I went with Boris was that Vincent was on a lecture tour. He lectured on art, and he wasn't going to be coming back to Hollywood in time for the picture. Right.
Now, I understand that Boris actually did some of his last work with you in films such as The Terror and things like that. And rumor has it that he was fairly sick when he was working on that. Is that true? What was it like in working in the final days with him?
He was sick, but he explained to me in front. He just said, Roger, I can't do any big action running scenes or anything like that. But I can act, I stand, I walk, I can give a full performance. I may have to rest a little bit. He was very honest in telling me how he would have to be treated because he was ill, and I respected what he said. Matter of fact, I remember there was even one sequence where he was at the top of a big staircase, and Jack Nicholson was at the bottom, and he was to walk down the stairs to talk to Jack. And Boris said to me, look, Roger, I can't walk down that long staircase. So I said, all right, here's what we'll do, Boris. We'll help you up to the top of the stairs, and I'll have people standing on each side of the camera, and you say your lines from the top and take 2 steps down, and our guys will grab you at that point. Mm-hmm. And then I will cut away to Jack at the bottom of the stairs. Now I'll bring the camera down to the bottom of the stairs, and we've cut from Boris starting to walk down the stairs to Jack watching him walk down the stairs. Now I've said, now you go 3 steps up, and we've got people here ready to catch you when you come down. And he took the 3 steps down, and then I cut to a 2-shot with Boris and Jack, and that was sort of one of the ways I was able to get more movement out of Boris. And he understood what I was doing, and I understood his problem.
Wow. Now, of course, you have worked with a huge number of actors, directors, and producers that have gone on to become really large swingers in the industry. People like Jack Nicholson, who you mentioned, Robert De Niro, Sylvester Stallone, Charles Bronson, Joe Dante, Alan Arkoff, James Cameron. Has there ever been a conscious choice for you to kind of stay in independent filmmaking, or would you have liked to broke into mainstream like they have?
There was a conscious choice. I did a couple of pictures for major studios, and I got along well with them. I did the St. Valentine's Day Massacre for United Artists, and a World War I and a World War II pictures for United Artists. And the relationships were good, but what bothered me was that I go back, as a matter of fact, a perfect example, I go back to what I said about the fall of the House of Usher, where in one meeting they said, yes, the major studios take a long time to make a decision, and then you're in what's known as development hell. You're working on the script, and you never know whether they're going to give you the go-ahead or not. Now, it meant that I just spent too much time preparing, whereas with my own company, New Horizons, I can get an idea like Dinah Croc, or an idea can be given to me like Dino Shark, and I just make the picture.
Right, right. Now, you actually, in the early days, did a lot of directing, and then you've kind of stepped back from directing and focused mainly on producing. Was there a reason for that? Do you prefer to be on the production side versus kind of in the game and hands-on?
I actually preferred when I was younger to be a producer-director combined, but I retired for 1 year in 1970. I was shooting a World War I picture in Ireland, and I was just so tired of shooting. I directed, I've forgotten, 58 pictures in 12 or 13 years. In that whole 12 or 13-year period, there was never a day that I wasn't in pre-production or shooting or post-production. Now, you can sort of have a semi-vacation in pre-production and a little bit in post-production, but not much. And at one time, I remember I was shooting a picture. I was shooting the picture during the day, casting the next picture at lunchtime, and cutting the previous picture at night. And I just decided this is too much. I just have to stop. I'm worn out. I never planned to quit. I thought I would just take the traditional 1 year sabbatical and come back. As a matter of fact, I already had an offer from United Artists for a picture to do at the end of the year. But I got bored during the year, and I started New World Pictures, and it became an instant success. And I was so busy running New World, I just never got around to going back to directing. And now I feel at my age, it's not necessarily a young man's game, but it's certainly not an old man's game.
Right. Now, there was actually a quote that we had found in some of our research that had said that you had made the quote, "I've never made the film I wanted to make. No matter what happens, it never turns out exactly as I hoped." Can you comment on that? And was there any film in your mind that sticks out that you really, really wish you had not made that you would take back if you could?
There's probably nothing that I really was disappointed in. There was a picture called Shark Reef when I first started out that didn't turn out quite as well as I hoped. But what I meant was, it wasn't so much that I thought they were bad pictures, it's that you never follow your plan exactly during shooting. So sometimes the film would turn out better than I thought, but always the film would differ slightly from my pre-production planning.
Right. Now, going along that line, I have to ask you about one film that you produced that has been kind of panned as a mistake, so I wanted to ask your comments on it. And that was, of course, Rock and Roll High School Forever with Corey Feldman. What was the conscious decision behind making that? I understood that there was actually a couple of different scripts that were bouncing around for a Rock and Roll High School sequel.
Rock and Roll High School was a tremendous success. Alan Arkoff did a brilliant job, and it was so good that I thought we should make a sequel, as people did. And I've forgotten the circumstances, but we had a young director on his first film, and somehow the sequel did not come together the way the first one did. I mean, everybody was working in good faith. Everybody thought the film turned out well, but I think maybe the script wasn't quite... Matter of fact, I know the script was not as good as the original. Mm-hmm. And it lacked the spark of the original. Alan Alan Arkoff really did a brilliant job. That is what is correctly referred to as a cult classic. It really is. It still plays all over the world. I mean, I don't know, it's 30 years old, or something like that. And we still make a lot of money from pay television, DVDs, and so forth, not only in the United States, but all over the world.
Right. And I had actually heard a rumor that the star of Rock and Roll High School, P.J. Soles, had actually written a treatment for a sequel. Did you ever see anything from her in regards to a possible sequel?
No, I had heard that too, and P.J. was great in the original. She played it with great energy and enthusiasm and just brought vitality to the screen. I would have liked to have seen that treatment because, in retrospect, the treatment and the script we went with were not as good as it should have been.
Right. Now, I also wanted to ask you, I'd heard that there is actually going to be a lot of your films that are being re-released this year, including Rock and Roll High School on DVD through a special line. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Yes, I've made a deal with the Shout Factory, which is one of the best of the independent DVD companies. We had our own DVD department until a couple of years ago when the DVD market started to slide, and we thought it was better to step away from that because we're making fewer films now. We used to make 10, 12 films a year, and now we make 4 or 5 and give our films to somebody else. So the Shout Factory is re-releasing, I think we made a deal with them for 50 films on which there'll be some additional information. I'm going to be doing some interviews with some of the actors and directors, and also commentary from myself on these films. Oh, and we have two films that we're really going to go for strong for re-release. We're starting right now on our website, New Horizons Pictures, to re-release Fire on the Amazon starring Sandra Bullock. I think it's fairly obvious why we're releasing that.
Right.
And then we have one that'll come out later in the year through the Shout Factory, and that will be the original Piranha.
Oh,
because
fabulous.
we'll be taking advantage of the big budget remake of Piranha.
Right. Now, in kind of talking about remakes and things like that, quite a few of your films have been remade, including one of the most recent ones that got a lot of attention, which was Death Race 2000. What are your opinions of the remakes of your films, and do you prefer them with the bigger budgets and multi-effects, or do you prefer kind of the old original that you did?
Well, the ones we remake are done on probably bigger budgets today than the original, partially because of inflation, but partially because the audience simply demands a bigger-looking film. And on a film like Death Race, they simply paid me a lot of money, and I said, boy, I'm happy to go along with this, and I think there's going to be a third Death Race, but it'll be made for DVD.
Ah, I see. Now, let me kind of ask you, because when you started out, the drive-ins were big. Then drive-ins kind of gave way to hard tops. Then the VHS market came in. Do you feel like VHS and DVD kind of saved the independent film industry?
They probably did, because theatrical distribution, starting in the 90s for medium and low-budget pictures, started to fade. When I first started, every film I made got a full theatrical release. Now I'd say no more than 1 or 2 out of 10 get a limited theatrical release. The Avatars and Jim Cameron, who started with us, did a brilliant job. I'm not knocking that. I think it's one of the best films ever made, one of the greatest films ever made. But the theaters simply are playing those films almost exclusively. Every now and then, a low-budget film will break through, but that market in a meaningful way is gone for us, and DVD and pay TV, and I hope soon the Internet will be the savior of the independents.
Right. Now, I had actually seen something online that I wanted to ask you about, something that was touted as a Roger Corman webisode called Splatter.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about that? Are you producing directly for video on demand and the Internet now?
just this one. This was for last Halloween. Netflix came up with the idea, and it was a really interesting idea of three short webisodes, as it were, of no more than 10 minutes each, 7, 8, 9 minutes each, and a group of people would be in a situation, a horrific situation. We chose the traditional locked house, but it was not a haunted house. And a number of people would die the first night, and the audience would then vote as to who they wanted killed the next week.
Oh.
And that would give us, because you had to take a day to get the results, that would give us 6 days to write, shoot, and do the post-production on a whole new script for the second week and do it again for the third week. And it wasn't a whole lot of money involved, but I did it, and my wife co-produced with me. I did it just for the fun of it, for the challenge. And Joe Dante, who'd gone on to make very big pictures, heard about it and called and said, "Roger, I'd like to come back. That's a really interesting idea." And we did it for that reason, really just for the fun of it.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, if anybody could have done it, it was you, because you're actually known for having one of the shortest production schedules ever, and that was you actually made a film in 2 days. Is that right?
2 days and a night, a little shop of horrors. We shot in a studio 2 days and then went out one evening, actually, for about 4 or 5 hours.
Wow, how do you cram everything into such a short amount of time?
A lot of it is pre-production planning. I'm a strong believer in pre-production planning, so that you don't walk onto the set. I'm thinking of the days when I was a director. You don't walk on the set and say, "Now where shall I put the camera for this shot?"
Right.
You have it worked out, everything, although you generally don't have everything. I think at best, I would have maybe 90% of the shots worked out in advance, knowing, as I said earlier, you're going to make some changes when you're shooting. For instance, Dino Shark, which is, I say, is on the Sci-Fi Channel tonight, as a matter of fact, at 9 o'clock. We made a number of changes because we had to coordinate the long shots, which were computer graphics, and the close shots, which were mechanical shots of the jaws biting into and devouring people, and blood shooting out of that. And we had to modify the computer graphics because we had to build the jaws in a slightly different way than we had planned, because the mechanics of it turned out to be a little bit bigger, and we had to make the head part of the jaw bigger. It was strange. On the other hand, it was fun because for some strange reason, the Dino Shark spent about half the picture eating pretty girls in bikinis.
Now, in closing up talking about Little Shop of Horrors, I just wanted to ask you to comment on another quote that we had received from Dick Miller when we interviewed him, and he had mentioned that he had felt that Bucket of Blood, which was done shortly before Little Shop of Horrors, was a great film, and he had felt that Little Shop of Horrors was kind of a rehashing of a similar storyline, and he wasn't sure why Roger Corman didn't pick him instead of Jonathan Hayes. Was there a decision as to a certain reason as to why, or?
That's a strange question, because it wasn't a rehash exactly, but it was a somewhat similar storyline. And I talked to Dick about it, and he said he didn't want to play the lead in it, but he would play a supporting role because he felt he would be repeating himself. So Jonathan played the lead, and Dick played a supporting role.
Wow.
Now, with all of us, these things were 40, 50 years ago,
right,
and we can misremember a little bit, but my memory is I discussed it with Dick. I don't know if I offered it to him, but he felt it was something of a rehash. I didn't think it was that much of a rehash because I thought there were a lot of original things in it. I thought it was just reusing some ideas in a totally new way.
Right. Now, of course, sadly, recently we also lost the great actor David Carradine, who you worked with.
Yes.
He was kind of known for being a little bit of a hellraiser on set. Did you ever have any interesting experiences with David?
No. for this reason. I've been told in advance that he had caused some problems on the set. And the first time he worked with me was at Death Race 2000, as a matter of fact. And I had lunch with him because he had read the script and liked it. And I said, David, I want you in this. You're perfect for the lead in this picture. But I finance my pictures with my own money. I don't have that much money, and I've got to move very efficiently. And he said, Roger, I know exactly what you're saying. Believe me, there will be no problems on this set. And there were not, and we did. I'd say we've done more than 10 pictures together over the years, and he has never once caused a problem.
Wow. Well, before we go, I wanted to ask you about 2 more projects that I had actually seen listed online on one of your resumes that are listed as either being in post-production or in development, and that is Road Raiders and Space 3001. What can you tell us about those projects?
Road Raiders has been changed to Water Wars because it rained so much during the shooting that we had to rewrite this is coming back to what I say, where you don't always make the picture you think you've made. Mm-hmm. So Water Wars is in post-production at the moment. And what was the name of the other title?
Space 3001.
No, I can't do Death Race 3001 because my contract with Universal is that only they can remake Death Race. Now, I may reuse some of the ideas because in the original, the drivers drove into each other trying to kill each other on the track and also got points for killing pedestrians.
Right.
And in the remake, they dropped the point about killing pedestrians, which I thought was very funny, as a matter of fact.
I think it's great.
Yeah. And I thought that was the key of the picture. So I may reuse that idea, but I can't call it Death Race.
Well, I'll tell you, Roger, to this day when I'm driving and I get a little bit of road rage, I think of that film. So definitely keep the pedestrians part in.
Yes, it grew. It developed into people saying things like 3 points for the little old lady and things like that.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap this up, I wanted to take a chance on behalf of everyone here, as well as all of our listeners, to wish you a happy birthday because your birthday's coming up.
That's right.
And my final question is, how would you like your legacy to be remembered? How would you like people in future generations to remember New Horizons and Roger Corman?
I'm not certain they will, but if they do, I would like to be remembered simply as a filmmaker. I've been director, producer, mentor to other people, but simply somebody who made films.
Perfect. Well, before we go, I have one more favor to ask of you. Yes. It would be such an honor for us if we could get you right now to do a short little station ID for us that we can cut out and play later on. So maybe just something like, "Hi, this is Roger Corman, and you're listening to Cult Radio."
Hi, this is Roger Corman, and you're listening to Cult Radio.
Fabulous. And we'd like to encourage and remind everybody to tune in to Dino Shark tonight on the Sci-Fi Channel. And we look forward to many, many more films from New Horizons and from Roger Corman because you, sir, are a legend in the industry.
Well, I thank you very much, Tiffany.
All right. Thank you so much for the interview.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.